All right, folks, it's time for another edition of the World Edition. And of course, we've got all kinds of things happening in the world, including an Ecuadorian presidential candidate, Fernando Villavicencio, who died while being shot and killed at a campaign event. So that is one of the things that I saw that was in the news today. So the assassination of Ecuadorian presidential candidate shocked the South American country, where rising drug-related violence is a major concern for voters, leading some of his rivals to suspend their campaigning. Valavencio, a vocal critic of corruption and organized crime, was killed in during that evening campaign event in northern Quito. So, a suspect in the crime later died of injuries sustained in a shootout, and six others so far have been arrested, the Attorney General's office said, in that particular country. Nine people, including a candidate for the legislature and two police officers, were injured, is also added as well. Their current president, Guillermo Lasso, said after midnight the crime was clearly an attempt at sabotaging the election and that voting would go ahead as planned on August 20th. So that is actually coming up very shortly and all along those lines. And that despite and amid a national state of emergency with the military mobilized to guarantee security. Lasso also declared 3 days of mourning for that particular incident as well. So that's something that's going on in Latin America. We also have, of course, the continuing war going on between Russia and Ukraine. Zelensky says the war is coming back to Russia after recent Moscow drone attacks. So that is something that we are seeing as well. And Ukraine has announced a humanitarian corridor for ships that are stuck in the Black Sea port. So that is something else that is happening in the world. The Pakistan parliament has been dissolved to pave way for elections in that particular country. So that is something also that is happening in that part of the world, in this particular case, around Asia. So Shehbaz Sharif and opposition leaders agreed on a caretaker prime minister in 3 days. And like I said, that particular parliament has been dissolved, and we'll see what happens with that particular part of the world as far as elections go and all in that space. By the way, coming back to Ukraine and Russia, the Russian founder of Yandex condemns the war in Ukraine. So we've actually got people that are even there that are speaking out against the war. So the co-founder of Yandex, Arkadia Valasa, has condemned the barbaric war in Ukraine, and we'll see what some of our panelists have to say about some of these different things that are happening on the world stage. So, West African leaders are meeting on the Niger coup, but few have options, as definitely that country is going through some military changes as well. So coup leaders in Nigeria grow increasingly defiant, and that is what folks are saying. And U.S. officials are actually losing hope about what could be going on in that particular part of the world. North Korea's Kim Jong Un has fired his top generals and ordered the military to step up war plans. So that is something else that's going on. So we're seeing a lot of disruption and instability throughout the world, not just in Russia and Ukraine, but throughout the world as well. And definitely, like I said, a lot of things are taking place in that war in Ukraine. So, like I said, at least two dead after a Russian attack on the Ukrainian city of Zaporizhzhia. And definitely that is something that is taking place in that part of Europe and everything. But the Ukrainian army, like I said, has hits the Russian command post in an occupied part of that country. So definitely a lot of things are taking place in there. Uganda president is defiant after the World Bank suspends funding over the laws that Uganda has surrounding the LGBTQ community and all in that space. And we were actually talking about that a little bit on yesterday, how different countries, some of them are have very strict rules within that community. So it'll be interesting to see what folks have to say about this particular Ugandan president being defiant when he is getting some flack from the World Bank. And Poland is planning to move around 10,000 troops to its border with Belarus. So it does look like other countries are getting involved in that conflict as well. And speaking of conflicts, a shipwreck turned outpost is the latest flashpoint in the U.S. China rivalry. So that is something that is going on. And China and the Philippines are having a dispute over the grounded warship, and that whole conflict is heating up as well. So definitely there is some of the conversations around that going on. And of course, as always, the weather is playing a lot of turmoil, not just in the U.S., but around the world as well, because the dam in Norway partially burst after days of heavy rain, flooding, and evacuations. So that is some of the things that we're seeing from a world standpoint. I'll get to my fellow panelists and see what they've got to say about a number of these things. And by the way, speaking of things that have been going on, the Hawaii fire death toll continues to climb as dangerous heat is impacting the U.S. and more. So that is what's happening. So Maui is definitely having some severe wildfires. We knew about those severe wildfires in other parts of the United States as well, and particularly California, but not just California, other parts of the West Coast, and of course, just weather in general. And the GOP alarms are going off after the Ohio abortion vote. So that was something that was going out. So they turned out for just one issue on the ballot. So in Ohio, there's just one issue on that particular ballot, and it'll be interesting to see what folks' thoughts are about how that vote went as well. And of course, Trump is still in the news as Trump's co-defendants are set to enter pleas on new charges in classified document cases. And there are still 2 remaining suspects in the massive brawl on the Montgomery, Alabama boat dock that took place recently as well. And some people were definitely seeing that as a case of people coming to the aid of somebody that was being assaulted, and other folks had different kinds of opinions around that as well. But definitely it's been a topic around X and some of the other social media sites as well. But we're going to bring in the panel as I brought up some of the things that I saw. And by the way, last but not least, Florida schools are trying to adapt to new rules on gender, bathrooms, and pronouns. So that is something that is going to be probably a topic of conversation, as well as permission slip is to be required to use kids' nicknames in some counties. So I guess you're going to have a permission slip if you want to use some of the nicknames that kids have as well. And that should be interesting, since kids can come up with some very interesting nicknames for themselves and all along those lines. So I'm going to bring in some of our panelists and see what they've got to say, and some of the other things that are going on in the world. So like I said, I've got Lee Newton Rhodes with me, and definitely got Sasha Starr, who will have some thoughts about what's going on with Ukraine, Russia, and China. And we've also got definitely Shaquille, and we've got Jatovi as well. So that's who I've got with me today, and it's always good to have conversations and all along those lines. Hey, Shaquille and Sasha, like I said earlier, I know there's a number of things that are going on in the world, but we think about politics, and we think about how we say that politics can be very rough in the United States and everything, but they play for keeps in some of these other countries. And definitely that was what was going on in Ecuador with those with that assassination. And I'd actually read an article where there have been several, and I do mean several, recent attacks on various leaders in South America and all in that space. Because definitely I think even the president of Brazil sometime back, there was an attack on him. There was an attack on the president in Haiti back in 2021. There was a attack on the president of Argentina, and definitely a number of the other countries in Latin and Central America. Like I said, there was actually 2 attacks on 2 of the leaders in Colombia. And of course, there was the attack on the Venezuelan president, and all in that space. So like I said, I think most of these were failed attempts and all in that way, but they've definitely been going on the last couple of years and all. in that kind of way. So, what is our thoughts about what is happening and how some of these people are in various countries are very polarizing? We say that we're polarizing, but I don't know that there have been any that I'm aware of. I mean, there might have been it, but no, that I'm aware of attempts on either Biden or Trump as of yet. But in the Latin American countries, there are definitely some severe attacks that are going on. So, what is your takes? As both of you are world travelers, you should kill more than Sasha, but I know Sasha has traveled around the world as well.
Shaquille? Okay. Yesterday, 590 Russian soldiers were killed in Ukraine. You're talking, Mark, about some two policemen who were injured and some clashes here and there. There were some four people who were apprehended and five people were put in jail. And in Ukraine, several hundred people, Russians and Ukrainians, are being killed daily for the last almost year and a half. It's the same thing like if you lived in 1942, 1943, there would be Stalingrad battle where thousands and thousands of people were being killed mercilessly. And you would tell me about some clashes on the border between, say, Uruguay and Argentina, and three and a half people were injured. How can you put this facts, this information in the same column? So your attention is being spread between rather insignificant events that no one would care and between major events that you're saying as just one of many others. Two policemen were injured and three policemen were hungry and they couldn't get their dinners and so on and on. I'm I'm very very disappointed.
Well, I'm glad you're
Exactly.
disappointed, Sasha. But one of the things I would say to that is that just like during the Vietnam War, they didn't just cover Vietnam, they covered a number of other conflicts. There are multiple continents in the world and multiple countries in the world. And if we're going to be the world edition, then I think that I need to look at a lot of the different things that are going on. There is a significant Latin American population, not just in the United States, but around the world as well. So if there are people that are in that community that might be concerned about some of those things that are happening in that part of the continent, I feel that as a journalist and as a trained journalist, it is my responsibility to talk about a variety of issues in that community as well as other communities. I was going to get to Ukraine and Russia, and I was going to get to other parts of the world as well, but and I'm not saying that that is not a important part of the conversation, but I do feel that various things that take place in the world, including things that take place in Australia. And I was going to ask Shaquille about some of the things that are going on there that I had heard about in the last day or two as well that are relevant and all in that conversation. So I
Mark,
have
Latin America is indeed very important. I agree with you. And the Philippines are important, and Niger in Africa is important, and many other countries. I have no problem with that. The only thing is the magnitude, the importance of what is now happening on Ukraine. It's all West is now on trial. If West will not be able to become victorious against Russia right now, the world will be very different place and very soon and very quickly. It will embolden China to go and claim Taiwan and take it over. And I want to tell you, even the U.S. economic status, never mind the downgrade, but the trust in U.S. as the partner, as the leading economy in the world, as leading cultural phenomenon in the world, will be grossly shaken if it's unable to uh, help to defeat Russia once and for all.
There are some people that would argue that definitely that is a valid concern and a valid thing that you are saying in that sense. There are some people that would argue that other parts of the world can have an impact on the world stage as well. Now, whether that
Mark,
is
you got it. You got
which
it.
is
No
a
more
most of us
arguments.
will agree.
I
Uh,
agree with you. No more arguments from me about that. Go ahead.
all right, no problem.
So,
And
so if we defeat Russia once and for all, Sasha, who are you going to replace them with?
You don't need to replace Russia.
What,
Russia.
what's it going to be? Just a
No,
group of
I'm talking about defeating Russia. I'm talking about defeating Putin's
Putin's regime, of course, right?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
Russia will continue to, I mean, it's been
Yeah.
in existence for the last 1200 years, so it
Yeah.
will continue to exist for another
Yeah,
1200 years.
look at
It
what they
will be
did
a
with it.
different country.
Look at what they do to people that disagree with Putin. Who was it, Narvisky or whatever his name was?
They're all getting 19 years,
He
25
gets
years.
19 years. In other words, if you say something that's anti-Putin, they throw you in the slammer for decades.
And
That's
prior
called-
to 19 years,
called-
he's serving right now 9 years. Okay, so now it's 19 on top of 9, and according to Russian law, you cannot serve 2 sentences at the same time. So you will serve your 9 years, and then you'll start your 19 years. And by the time that it will go, I don't think that Putin will be alive by that time. But still,
Why did he go back? I mean, the thing is, wouldn't he have been better off to do like Charles de Gaulle? Spend the time outside of the country, or like Garry Kasparov. If you're going to be a dissident in Russia, you got to leave.
You're talking about whom you are talking about?
Navarre or whatever his name was.
Yeah, Navalny. Okay, you are right. He returned from Germany and was arrested right in the plane after it's landed.
Right. Why did he do that?
You know what? Obviously, he is a heroic person. There is no doubt about that. However, rationally speaking, I agree with you. He would be more useful to democratic forces in Russia being outside, using his freedom to speak, to publish materials, or so on, than he's sitting now in jail for the next 20 years or so.
Right.
I agree with you.
No, I hear you. Hey, Sasha and Nick, there was another part of the world that we talk about, including on your show, and definitely President Biden had brought up an interesting thing. And if Shaquille is done with some of the things that he's involved in, he might have some thoughts about this. And I know Toby may as well. But President Joe Biden on yesterday signed an executive order to block and regulate U.S. High-tech U.S.-based investments going toward China, a move that administration said was targeted, but it also reflected an intensified competition between the two world's biggest powers. And the order covers everything from advanced computer chips to microelectronics to quantum information technology. And guess what, Nick? Artificial intelligence is covered as well. So senior administration officials said that the effort stemmed from national security goals rather than economic interests, and that the categories it covered were intentionally narrow in scope. The order seeks to blunt China's ability to use U.S. investments in its technology companies to upgrade its military, while also preserving broader levels of trade that are vital for both nations' economy. So what are our thoughts around that? I know that some of the folks here are involved in the technology lane and all in that spaces. We oftentimes talk about AI and everything, and it looks like we are trying to put some some limitations on what can come out of China, because we know a lot of that stuff that we use on a regular basis, including this computer I'm using and the cell phone and a number of other things, are probably coming from Asian ports and Asian areas. So it is definitely something that is widespreadly used by a number of folks. So is this going to work, and is there going to be some pushback? Because that seems like something that a lot of folks might not like, including some of the folks that Biden might be trying to win votes from and everything.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work. I mean, years ago, they said, well, we can slow down manufacturing being imported overseas, because who's going to pick up a plant and move it to China? That's ridiculous. It's too expensive. It's huge. And then you have to put all this inventory inside of it. No one's going to do that. Okay. And of course, it was done. Now you're talking about technology, which is very easily transportable, Mark. You can sign all the bills you want to say that we're going to stop water from being flowed over to China. It ain't going to happen. So it's more of a charade and a parade by Joe Biden than anything realistic that they're going to accomplish by signing this bill. Frankly, it's a waste of time. And that's just the reality of it. Transporting technology is zillion times easier than moving a Ford plant or a General Motor plant, or even a furniture plant or a manufacturing plant over to China. That's really tough. That's capital intensive. This is, technology flows like water. Forget it. So I'm glad he signed the bill. I'm glad he's happy, and all the Democrats are all clapping, but it's meaningless.
What's your thoughts, Jacoby? You get in that technology gaming lanes and everything, and like I said, it's going to be very difficult, I would think, to actually pull off it because of how intense. I mean, shucks, the microwave has even got parts from Asia in it as well. So I don't know how you're going to actually implement what he claims he's going to implement. But what is your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's going to be it's an attempt. I will admit, I mean, there's not really much you can do in terms of technology wise, because say, for example, in the gaming world right now, a lot of people are, Nintendo and a ton of other companies actually any developer is upset at these emulators that you can play any game you want to on, say, for your phone, because on your Android phone you can actually download an add-on, or actually even on the iPhone if you reprogram it. But you can download, put in an actual emulator and play all the Nintendo games that were ever created, all the 1,000 Nintendo games. And that's what companies are going for. And that's what, I mean, so it's impossible to chase that down because it gets into hacking and it's a good thing to sign, and you'll get some of the smaller companies or the smaller businesses, but the people that are regularly doing it on a regular basis, the hackers and there's a company I was looking up yesterday that is selling a product on Temu, which is a Chinese competitor to Amazon. They actually got hit from another company they had that was that was selling, jumping into privacy issues because they were easily hacked, supposedly, and giving out their personal information. But they're selling a product where you can play Game Boy games, you can play PS1, PlayStation 1 games, you can play all these old school retro games just on this machine that's running a Linux client or another program in the background that can run other games on top of that. All it was somebody reprogrammed that. They took the structure of a Nintendo 64 controller, made it look like that, but put a screen in there, and you can play whatever retro game you want to. Legally, you're not really supposed to, because those games are owned by those companies and those developers. But that's exactly what's going on, and trying to take the money away from them, trying to block it. Nick is right that it's going to be impossible to stop. But it's something that I guess had to be done to stop some people to help out with it, and it does look good for Biden to do. Even honestly, every president has tried that in the past. I mean, every president has said the similar things, especially as China arose as a competitor. But yeah, it's one of those things that's not going to stop.
Speaking of playing politics, and it comes to an issue, and I know that Nick may have some thoughts around this as well, and maybe even the other members of the panel and all along those lines, but then the national politics, there are hot button issues that are out there, including everything from our support of Ukraine to abortion, and apparently the huge voter turnout against a special ballot measure in Ohio that would have made it tougher to protect abortion rights is setting off alarm bells among Republicans Republican strategists who say abortion will be a problem for their party in 2024. So they say that their hopes to win back control of the Senate and keep their House majority, but acknowledge abortion politics will complicate their chances of winning key races in even conservative-leaning states such as Montana and Ohio, where Senators John Tester, who is a Democrat in Montana, and Sherrod Brown, who is a Democrat in Ohio, are up for re-election. So they are saying that this very hot button debate that has been going on in the wake of last year's Supreme Court decision overturning Roe versus Wade was on full display on Tuesday's special election in Ohio, a state that former President Trump won handily in 2016 and 2020. So a Republican-backed measure to make it tougher to amend the state's constitution to protect abortion was soundly defeated 57% to 43% after more than 3 million Ohioans voted, including 700,000 who voted early. So a key Senate Republican strategist said it shows that abortion continues to be a very tricky subject for Republicans post-Roe reversal. And that particular person said that independent college-educated women, even those who lean to the right, are breaking in a way that they never have on the abortion issue. Before the Roe reversal, independent right-leaning women were almost a lock for Republicans, but now it's not so clear, according to that strategist and all in that space. So it looks like the centrist and center-right women in the suburbs, they are breaking in a different way than they ever have in the past. This was a very tricky issue for Republicans in the 2022 midterm, and it's obviously a very tricky issue for Republicans in the off-year, awkwardly timed election that they saw in Ohio, according to a source. So definitely looks like the Democrats turned out heavily and we're mobilizing around that particular issue. So what is our thoughts around that? Because it can be an issue that is very, it's very, has a lot of people that are very passionate about it on both sides and everything in that way. So it can be something that can, I guess, either hurt you in the elections or help you in the elections. Lee, I know you're very much pro-family and everything, and you are running for president. What is your thoughts? Because I think that this is going to be a key issue in a number of spaces. I gave the example of Ohio, but I'm seeing similar things in Montana and other places as well. So what is your take? Are women going to come out in droves because of their thoughts around the abortion issue? But what is your take on this, as it seems like it's going to be a key issue on the not just state levels, but national levels as well?
I think there are two issues here. One is in terms of, is the life inside the woman, is it a value? Is it a human life? And there are those people like myself who, I have a hard time after conception saying, no, it's not a life. At what point do you draw the line? Or do you not draw the line up until birth and say, you know what, birth minus a minute, you can do what you want, kill it, because it's not a life. And then for those who hold that position, I understand many do on Jacoby. If you're going to say it's a woman's body, it's a woman's choice, can a woman, if they want, just chop off an arm because it's her body? Chop off an arm, take out an eye. Why not? It's her body. Do with it what you want. Let's be consistent. Jacoby, what were you saying?
So if a woman is raped and is impregnated.
Okay, 1 second, I apologize. Let's take rape off the table.
No.
And then health of the woman. I'm agree with you. I'm not allowed of that. I'm going there with you for that.
You have some body who's 8 months. She's 8 months pregnant, and she was raped. What are you going to do, Jacoby?
Where was she between the rape and 8 months?
Hold on, Lee. You cannot say let's be consistent, but let's take rape off the table.
No.
Either say she has to have the baby even though she's raped by her uncle at the age of 13, which has happened.
She's 8 months pregnant. Now, what are you going to do, Jacoby? You're the judge, Judge Jacoby. Judge Jacoby, let him answer this. Judge Jacoby, she was raped by her uncle. She's 8 months pregnant. The doctors say it's a healthy baby. She wants an abortion. What does Judge Jacoby say?
Judge me. It's none of my business.
Because
I'm not raising the child. I'm not controlling her life. I have no business in her business.
So Judge Jacoby, will you have to make a decision? Are you going to allow the abortion or not? Me saying I have no business in her choices
and her family's choices, that means I have no rule. I cannot tell her to have it. I can't force
No.
her.
It's a ballot issue. It's on the ballot. Do we allow those or do we not allow those?
No, that's not what's on the ballot.
No, I'm putting it on the ballot now. That's a ballot issue before you. Nick just brought it up. Do we allow it or do we not allow it? Take a position. So you're allowing it then.
You're allowing it.
Again, it's none of my business.
By not disallowing it, you're allowing it by default.
But it's your
Okay,
business.
I just want to be very
somebody
clear.
sleeps with,
Counselor,
what gender
I want to be
identity
very
they
clear.
go with, all of
You're
that's your
telling me the
business.
state
What words
has
they
no
use, that's
interest.
your
Shaq,
business.
you're trying
But
to
abortion-
muddy the
Not
argument, and
child's
again, that's none of my
Yeah.
business either, Shaq.
Oh, sure, it's not. Yeah.
I just want to be clear.
I want to.
Clear, counselor. The state has no interest in an unborn child's life. Would that be correct?
The state has no interest in coming between a woman and her doctor.
I'm going to take that to the extreme then. So you're okay with women using it as a form of birth control?
You're going to make your
Yes.
decision based on an extreme example.
You just did with rape.
It's a realistic possibility. We're not saying it's an extreme example.
What's
This
the
issue is
you-
not that easy.
What is a realistic possibility? Is a 13-year-old being raped by an uncle realistic?
Yeah.
Yes.
13-year-old raped by an
if-
uncle, and she doesn't get an abortion. 8 months later, she says, "No mas, I want to kill the child. I want to have an abortion," and you're okay with it.
Are you saying and this being
I just want to hear how.
Nick, Shelby has a problem with saying yes or no.
life-
No, I don't. No, I don't. Because me saying
That's all.
that it has
It's all right.
none of my business means I do not make a decision for that family. So I cannot say, hey.
So
you
in other
don't
words,
do
you're not
this,
going to
or
say
you don't do
yes
that.
or no because
It
you
is
don't want to be
based
kicked out
on
of
their
the
family. It is based on what they decide, what that female, that woman and her doctor decide. It's not my decision to say, hey, you should, you shouldn't.
That wasn't the question that you were asked, Toby. So clearly you don't want to just say, yes, I've got no problems with that.
Shaq,
Right.
just
So-
because you cannot understand the nuance in this answer doesn't mean that I did not answer the question.
I know, because I'm such a dumbass, Toby. You better
Cool.
educate me like
You've
you normally
been in
do,
the
right?
private chat in this whole grumpy.
Jacoby? Jacoby?
I'm not in a grumpy mood at all.
No.
I'm
No,
not
let's
in a
pretend,
grumpy mood at
Jacoby,
all.
pretend for a second you're in the legislative, and you're making law now. You're
I'm
in the
making
law,
law.
making what? You want to, and presented before you is this ballot issue.
Okay.
And there were those who want to make this, in Nick's case, illegal, and those who want to say, you know what? It's not the state's business, keep it legal. And you're taking an up or down vote. Well, how does Judge Jacoby?
Now, Lee, you just presented me with my answer in the question. You said people want to make it illegal and people want to say it's none of the state's business. What did I just state? It's not my business. So in your question that you just
As a
asked me-
congressman, as a legislator, you can't say that. Otherwise, why'd you take the job?
You can. Is it the state's business if a man goes out and if a guy goes and pleases himself in a sock? Is it the state's business?
The state will say, you know what? We will keep that legal.
No, Lee, don't change it. Don't change it.
I'm not
It's
changing it.
the state's
I'm voting
business.
as a no. It's not the state's business, so I would make that legal.
It's none of my business. When I say it's none of my business, what does that mean?
You try to deviate and it's perfect.
Shaq, no, stop. Lee and I are having a discussion and you're
All
trying
right,
to
I'll
muddy.
jump off. I'll jump off. Leave you guys to it.
Shaq, I can handle this. That's good.
No, that's okay. But there's no point me being because it's just going to be you guys until you guys finish.
When I asked you a question that is it the state's business, you said no, it's not the state's business. When you asked me about abortion, I said it's not my business. How is your answer different?
Because by me saying it's not the state's business, if that was a ballot issue before me, as a member of the legislature, I would not make it illegal, or I would make it legal. It's one or the other. There's only two choices. I or nay.
Hold a second.
But what I'm
Lee and Jacoby, on the flip side of that, because that's something I was going to bring up, is it the government's business to make the decisions then the other way. Because one of the things that is going on in Ohio, and I think that that's why a lot of women came out to vote, is that literally the Republican governor, Mike DeWine, in 2019 signed a law criminalizing abortion after 6 weeks, once a fetal heartbeat can be detected. There are some people, including some in the medical community, that would say that 6 weeks is a arbitrary number, and that there are those that might want it at a different time, kind of like what y'all are talking about, much later in the birth cycle and everything. And there are some that might want it even earlier, at the point of conception. There are some people that say that that is a legitimate time. I don't know at what point does society determine this, and to Toby's point, isn't it really up to the families to make that decision and everything? So that's where I think is where a lot of women are coming from.
So Mark, anything that the legislature doesn't make illegal by default is legal.
Say what?
I would like to
Anything that the state does not make illegal by default is legal.
No, I just said they signed a law criminalizing abortion.
They're making it illegal.
Hold on. Each woman who is pregnant, whether she's 13 years old or 63 years old, some cases there are, it's enormously difficult, psychological, and at the end of the day, personal decision of the woman, her family, maybe her clergyman and mentors or whoever they are. It's very, very complicated decision to make. Why the state? They don't have anything better to do to get on and saying, oh, after 6 months you cannot do it, or 6 months you maybe can do it, or so on. What state has to do with that? Nothing. Out. Go and fuck yourself and just do something useful for your constituencies. Leave women and abortion issue alone. Period. Just go away.
Exactly, because I think
by taking that position, you're saying you're okay when it happens.
Yes, of course, I'm okay.
Yeah,
I'm okay.
Thank you. Doctors, you're being honest. I appreciate your honesty.
Hey, Lee, and I'm the other question I've got to ask is, I don't know how many familiar people are familiar, because I have a number of friends and some of them are women, and they will bring up a story that is out there. It's a movie, but some people are afraid that it could be a reality. So at what point does the conversation stop you from carrying it to the extreme? Because there's a movie out there called Handmaid's Tales, and that's actually what a lot of women are afraid of, that it would be carried to the extreme, and that the government could, have them basically being almost like chattel slaves and everything. So if you're not able to have a baby, you're supposed to serve as a handmaid to those that are able to have a baby, and in some cases even having these kind of like male figures that are very dominant, that are having the women serve them, for lack of a better term. That is kind of the premise of A Handmaid's Tale. And there are a lot of women out there that think that this, while it is a work of fiction, is very close to a reality, and that if the government goes down this path, that it could lead to that. There is a lot of women out there that have that fear. I've had conversations with them. And what is your answer to them, Lee? Because they are afraid that if you carry it to the extreme on one issue, that what's to stop the male-dominated patriarchy from carrying it to the extreme?
I'm not sure I understand your question. These men are intentionally raping these women to forcing them to have their babies?
Yeah, so essentially in the show, there are those women who are able to have children. Those women are sent as handmaids to other couples, power couples, who aren't able to have children, or do not want to have the woman in that. They're being surrogates. Couple. Yeah, basically they are forced surrogates for these families, and they are supposed to serve that family and basically be their surrogate and do.
Is this taking place in America? We're talking about?
No, this is a fictional book, but based on a lot of the policies that are going out there. That's what a lot of women fear, that's the pathway that we're going down. Okay. For example, when Lindsey Graham, as soon as Roe was overturned, Lindsey Graham got on camera saying we would like we're now going to push for a federal ban, which means they're trying to go across the board and not leave it up to the states. Essentially, opposite of what they said, the reason they wanted to overturn Roe. Then you have some other, and this is why I brought up the rape case, is because you have a lot of the GOP, some of the governors, some of the mayors, some in federal legislation in the House and so on and so forth, have said that we would do no exceptions on abortion, which is against your argument earlier. And that's what I was trying to bring up, the rape, because, you were saying, well, let's take rape off. Well, that is no exceptions. That's all to the extreme that we are arguing against in the first place. So that is the idea, part of the idea that women are fearful of.
Two things. One is the reason I said take rape off the table and the health of the mother is because I think that's a small minority of the abortions that we're talking about. Let's talk about the majority.
We can't take health of the mother off the table because there is a percentage out there, a decent size percentage. For example, I'll bring up the numbers in a second, but like in the minority communities, the mortality rate around birth is high in the African American communities and the minority.
What do you mean by high?
I'll bring up the stats. I'm gonna type them in as I talk. But so, for example, childbirth is all deals with the health of the mother. It is not. It has nothing to do with the health of the father. Absolutely nothing, because there's no death that happens from a father from birthing a child. But there is a percentage of women that die, or even with psychological problems, postpartum depression. You have all these issues that come along with birth. It's not just this, hey, we pop up a child and hey, now we got this healthy child. Then you have to look at having birth defects, and then you're looking at all these other financial issues that you're going to have to run into, especially having a child with special needs. And can a 13-year-old child be forced into motherhood now having a child with special needs who can't get benefits and so on and so forth? These aren't really extremes. We just assume they are. So
those are the norms. If it's not extremes, those are the norms.
Extreme. Okay. The base level for me when we're talking extremes is something that may happen 1 in a billion or 1 in 350 million. That's an extreme thing. When it's not extreme, when it happened, if it's above like a particular percentage, let's see, mortality rates in childbirth. That's what I'm gonna look up real quick. Pull that up real quick. There are 20.4 deaths in 100,000 live births for women under the age of 21, 31.3 for the age of 25 to 39, 138.5 for the ages of 40 and over. So that's not really, that's not, one of those things that we have to look at that, hey, it's okay. I mean, COVID deaths were up like that. So it's a serious thing. So we cannot, and when we're making this legislation, this is why I say it's not between me. It's not for a legislation. Like, I'll completely agree with Sasha on this, that it shouldn't be up to legislation or dudes. It should be up to the mother and her doctor, because we don't know what's going on with her health. Does she have the diabetes brought on birth, brought on by this pregnancy, which could lead to her mortality rate going high, so she might die. But no, we're going to force her to have this child, even though she may die. It just doesn't make sense to me why I should make that decision, or why somebody should make that decision, and why we believe that women make this decision so flippantly, like they don't take into account the other things that go on in this family dynamic that they're now going to have to create. So that's why I'm like,
let me hear what Sasha has to say.
I'd like to make 2 points. Number one, when you are saying that rape cases are minority and should be taken off the table or stay on the table, I don't care one way or another. What I'm trying to tell you guys, and you should know it better, that outside of marriage, most of the sexual intercourses are in some kind of form of rapes, because if the man will not insert himself on the female one way or another, could be very gentle way, it could be not so gentle way, but there are some elements of rape, because in some cases sex is happening. It's not a rape, but it's not consensual 100% either. It's she's moaning, oh, not now, oh, I'm not ready, oh, I'm not this or that. But sometimes when a woman says no, she means maybe. When she says maybe, it means yes. And when she says yes, she's not a woman. She's probably a call girl. But so stay aside of that issue as the clear rape and almost rape and a little bit of rape. No. It's very, very difficult to qualify. So any woman, if there is a case that because of the rape she would be allowed to have abortion, she can say after any sex, even with her husband, she can claim that she was raped, and she's not going to lay charges, but at least so she would be allowed to make an abortion. Okay. Number two, all this abortion issue, isn't it that coming from the church perspective that there is a divine life is being destroyed and therefore it should be forbidden, or so on? But I don't know, in Canada, church is absolutely outside of government. Some people go to church, some people don't, and nobody actually cares. You can go to church 5 times a day, you can not go to church for 55 years, and nobody cares. It's really your personal business. So church is completely out of government in Canada, at least. And I thought that America is the same thing, that the church is separated from the government, but maybe it's not so.
There's supposed to be a separation of church and state. That's what they say and they claim, but there has been a rising amount of Christian evangelists and others that play a very active part in what is going on. But this is not anything new. The late Billy Graham was very much, and we had a guest on recently that talked about that, was very much involved in a lot of decisions, and he wasn't the only one. I mean, Oral Roberts had the ear of a lot of politicians. Tammy Faye Baker had the ear of a lot of politicians. I can go down the whole list and everything, including some that are currently out there, like T.D. Jakes has the ear of some political folks and everything.
Mark, you can just say the evangelical right. That is a voting bloc for the GOP. So they have an influence, and but Sasha, I have to completely disagree with you on the rape stuff. No, okay. I'm sorry, I can't ride with you on that. On the us not being a part of abortion, I can agree with you there, but I can't go with you on the rape thing. There is.
No, I said there are some elements of rape. Not every sex involves rape. I can't
ride with you on that.
Not every sex, but most cases, if man will not impose himself, show the initiative to initiate something. It's not like, okay, here a man, here is a woman, they agree to have sex, here comes the sex. It doesn't work that way in real life, at least from my personal experience. It just doesn't work that way.
Sasha.
Yeah.
Are women adults?
Yes,
women over age. They don't have the ability to consent or not consent. Do we treat them as equals, or do we treat them as,
It's not, it's not black and white. It's not so clear. Women have their historical, so to speak, etiquette of not initiating sex, not 100% of the cases, 99.5%, that will do. So they are not initiators. They are not willingly comply with the man's desire. Do it and do it now and do it my way. They're not. Some cases they would agree, maybe 10%, and 90% they would not. Again, they're not saying no, because that would be the same. Oh, she said no. Okay, so we don't have sex. No, they don't say no, but they indicate that not now, they're not ready yet. They would like to know you better. Maybe next
Mark, we got to get some women on this show.
No, we definitely
Yeah,
got to get some women on. We had Kim on earlier, and after that, I'm going to get some other women on. But I mean, there was a whole political or an advertising campaign that I remember, to Sasha's point, where there was a whole advertisement that literally said that what he just said, which is that no means no. That was a whole advertising campaign, which is that as soon as you hear the word no, you are supposed to back off, and all along those lines, no matter what they claim and everything, because the campaign was no, literally means stop, don't go any further.
And the whole movement that just happened, the Me Too movement.
Truth. It doesn't work in real life. Where normally, educated and coming from nice family lady will always automatically will say no. Doesn't mean that she really means
so. The onus should be on the man that he got a signed permit beforehand.
Well, I mean, there was a whole thing on.
That's quite possible. That I mean, but now
I mean, we'll have to get some women on, including some women from near here, near meaning where.
At least not today, not now.
But I mean, definitely we're gonna have to get some more women on. To your point, Lee, and everything, because they're including some women that are college age and all along those lines. Because there is a whole movement. I mean, there have been incidences, including around the corner where I'm at and everything. I mean, in Duke and UNC and even Harvard, around the whole notion of date rape. There are some people that would say that that is not a reality and everything, and that there were some forced activities. But I would argue that if the woman said no, it means no, and date rape is a legitimate thing, and that there are even ways, including some famous people, that have enticed people in order to get into those kind of compromising situations and everything. I'm actually going to push back on something a little slightly, not totally, that Jatovi said, because when it comes to evangelical right, I do think that that is a voting bloc, and that it is a strong voting bloc. But I would argue that there is a church-based group that is also on the left side of politics. Because, like I said before on this show, I'm friends with Reverend Barber. Some people would argue that Jesse Jackson was part of Operation Push, and that a lot of even the civil rights stuff came out of the church. So there has been a church-based political conversation that comes maybe a little bit more from the left than the evangelical side. So I can't say that the church is on just one side of because there are evangelical folks that are on the left side of politics as well.
Yeah, because pastor out of South Carolina, remember, he's actually in the Senate. Well, not in the Senate. He's in Raphael Warnock is pastor. So no, it's not just one. No, but the Christian right, the evangelical right has a big play in politics. And yes, the left has theirs as well. I just gave one example. I didn't give multiple because I just said that's the easiest one for people to recognize. That's the one that people advertise most about or talk about.
Yeah, I want to say that one of the kingmakers, and some people will say that he's a kingmaker and everything. I think that he comes out of the religious politics as well, and that is out of South Carolina. Because I want to say that Jim Clyburn, who many people see as a kingmaker, and that's somebody that has influence enough to get people elected and everything, is also religiously connected as well. And if I'm wrong, Jatovi, correct me, but I think that I am right in thinking that he is tied to a church, or at least has some very strong church connections and everything. And he is definitely seen as a kingmaker in politics, particularly there in the South Carolina area, but not just South Carolina, but nationally as well. Because I mean, he's been there are some folks that are frustrated even where he won't take a stand. This may actually interest both Shaquille and Lee, but there are some people in the what some people would consider the left that are wishing that he would take a concrete stand on reparations. And apparently he's seeing that as a political football, just like abortion can be a political football. So he is intentionally avoiding coming out one way or the other on that discussion. But I know some reparationists that are, and I'm not sure if that's an actual word, but if not, I just made it up and everything. But there are some folks that are very much in favor of reparations that are frustrated that he won't.
Does he not have an opinion, or he just doesn't want to share it publicly?
I think that he doesn't want to state it one way or the other. He doesn't want to share it publicly, and he doesn't want to come out whether he is for reparations for the African American community or not. And there are some, if you go into Clubhouse, you go into Facebook, you go into some of the social media rooms, you will see some people that call him out for that, because they're like, wait a minute, we need you to come behind our issue and come behind our stand so that we have your voice with us and all in that space. But he refuses to do that. And from a political standpoint, that makes a lot of sense to me, because if you are a politician, there are certain issues that you might try to avoid coming out one way or the other, because it can cost you more votes than you might win if you come out one way or the other on the stand. So while the reparationists might be happy if he would come out, there are some other folks that'll be like,
Mark, this is where I'm naive. If they're going to cost you votes for stating your convictions, then maybe you're in the wrong business.
That's politics.
That's politics. Exactly.
That's politics. For example, I mean, look at even if we go back or talk a little bit about the abortion issue more. If you look at how, once the Roe v. Wade came down, and then once the votes happened in last year, and the Republican Party was looking for that giant red wave and all this other stuff. But because women came out and pushed back against that, and they're starting to see that, a lot of Republicans aren't pushing, hey, we're going to do these bans, we're going to do this. Now you even have DeSantis. He actually went on, I think there was an article in The Hill that I was reading where he said, well, because in Florida they signed a ban, but he's now saying, well, I won't penalize women for having an abortion. Well, you just signed a ban saying you would, but now you're running for president. Now you're saying that you won't penalize the women for doing that. So now you're trying to have it both ways.
What changed?
Yeah. So
But,
that's politics.
And also, DeSantis,
That's the same thing with the reparationists. That's why he won't say
DeSantis is not running for anything. He has no chances. He is too short, and he's not very.
Wait. What does height have to do with it, Sasha? You got me on that one.
No, you know what? If he were president and he is short, that's forgiven. But even in a race where he is nowhere even to be seen, he's so short, and the other people are towering over him, it doesn't look good. So he has no chances.
Well, funny thing is,
we get ready to wrap up and everything, but I do have a quick question for Jacoby as we were getting ready to wrap up, because speaking of Florida, there is a notion of that you have to fill out a form in order to actually say what name you're going to be called, and it's part of that is around gender identity. But apparently, if you are Tom, but you want to be called Thomas, you have to fill out this form in Florida, and maybe it'll be passed to other places as well. So I know that your son's name is Bennett. Would you be filling out a form called, if you want to be called Benny or something along those lines? And what would your thoughts be around that? Because you are, well, actually, I think all three of you are parents. I know I'm not a parent, but all three of you are parents. But what would your thoughts be around this? Because apparently you literally have to fill out a form throughout Florida in order to determine what the teachers are supposed to call your student and everything. So I just wondering what folks' thoughts were about that, and whether you would be in favor of that. Because apparently, like I said, even if you want to be called Tom instead of Thomas, you got to fill out the form.
It's an attack on the transgender community. That's why they did that.
Wait, what has this to do anything with transgender?
Because they want to force you to.
Marcus mentioned first name, Tom versus Thomas.
But if you are a transgender child and identifying, say, a woman identifying as a male, and you changed your name from Vivian to Vincent, they are
legal name change.
It's a name change.
No, a legal name change is a legal name change. Other than that, it's not a legal name change.
If the parents at the house are calling Vivian,
that's a nickname. I got that. That's a nickname.
Yeah. So what? Then the teacher has to call that child Vivian, unless the parent fills out the form to say you have to call the child Vincent.
Right, and it comes down to that's where it seems to be very much to the extreme to me. To your point, Lee, even if you have called by a nickname in your house, so like maybe you are called by a nickname that is a short version of whatever it might be. So instead of Walter, you're called Walt. You literally have to fill out this form and everything, even though everybody in your household.
Mark, for what age? What grades is that for?
It's supposed to be, I think, for across the board in the school.
K to 12.
K through 12 was my understanding. Like I said, I can do some more research and we can have more conversation about it on tomorrow. But it's my understanding it is across the board because it is a state board of education requirement requiring schools to use a student's given legal name unless a parent gives written permission otherwise. So you're supposed to use whatever the name is on the birth certificate unless the parent fills out this form and tells you otherwise. So you have to fill out the form.
Now,
I get that. I just don't see I still don't see the connection between that and transgender. I just really don't, because it's across the board.
Well, it goes back to so they can't say, "Hey, we're going to make this against transgender individuals." Yes, you make it across the board, but who does it affect most? That's
everybody. Let's say my name was Leopold and I'm going to be called Lee. Sorry, you can't do that.
Again, which community does it hurt most? This goes across the board when we try and create laws and we never look at, who these laws end up affecting. I mean, and so this really was attacked to stop transgender individuals because you cannot say this is a transgender law. So again, it's just, it more affects the transgender community than anybody.
And on that note, I know we've got to do a recording of another show and everything along those lines. So we're going to bounce, but this has been another interesting and lively discussion, and we'll have more lively discussion tomorrow. I don't think we have another guest, so this has been a week of non-guests, but I do have some guests that I'm working on for next week and everything, including trying to get some more women on the show so they can speak to their point of view and not just have a bunch of guys trying to give our point of view about women and everything. So definitely I'm reaching out to some women to be on the show and had some in the past, and hopefully we'll be having some more join the conversation as well. I know Debbie is on our regular list, but she's been also very busy, and it's very early in the morning in Hawaii because, like I said, I think she's still in Hawaii.
I think it's 7 hours, 6 or 7 hours.
Well, the fires in Hawaii might be affecting her too. So that's
the fires could be affecting her as well. Right. Yeah. So we
hope see you guys tomorrow.
Lee, before I go, I appreciate you, man. I really do.
What did I say wrong today?
No. I appreciate our going back and forth. I truly appreciate you, man. It's fun.
Always good conversations. We'll be back.
See you guys tomorrow.
More great conversations. See you tomorrow.